And then Ablat Gemara. Today's daf is daf Chaf Hey Amid Aleph. So we'll continue learning the Gemara. So we learned in the Mishnah that a woman who set aside Kabbanas because she decided to become a Nazir, and afterwards her husband canceled her Naziris, which only takes effect for the future. So the animals that she set aside have already a din of a carbon. If it's her animal, and they became consecrated, but what do you do with that? With our three animals, there's a chattas, is oil and a shlamim. So the carbon chattas we say we toss away because since there's no need to have a kapara anymore, since she's no nazir, but it's consecrated. So therefore that chattas gets thrown away. If it's an oil, and you treat it like an oil and a shlamim like a shlamim. Then we said, what about she didn't set aside animals? She just set aside money. So we said it depends. If the money was not nominated, then we say that the entire money is used to buy animals which are voluntary oilus, or sorry, birds or whatever, voluntary oilus for the mizbeach. However, if she did set aside, didn't nominate that this money is going to cover the chattas and the oil and the shlamim, then again, the money for the chattas gets thrown away. The money for the oil is used for an oil. The money for shlamim is used for shlamim. So we're up to the Gemara Daf Chavdalad on the base, the very last line. If let's say the money was there, compiled together, and it's just stam, it wasn't nominated. What's what? Then yipul nadava, you take the entire lot of money and use it to buy voluntary karbanos. The obvious question is, included in that money is money for carbon chattas. So how is it possible that the entire money should be used for a voluntary carbon? Top of the page, the money of the chattas is included. This is a halacha that even though there's money, despite the fact that there's money of the chattas included, because you didn't nominate it officially, formally, therefore the entire lot of money can be used for a voluntary carbon. The Shlaki says, not because of halacha Moshe, we actually derive it from a pasuk. The pasuk says that they bring a carbon l'chol nidrayim for their vows. And we darshan that if there is any money left over from their vows, use it for a nadava, use it for a voluntary offering. So Torah says any excess money from a neder should be used for a voluntary offering. So in this case here, she consecrated she set the money aside to be used for kabbanas, and then she's no longer a nazir. So that money now is extra. So that extra money should be used for voluntary carbon. Says the Gemara. The Mishnah makes a distinction whether you nominated where the money is going to or you didn't. So according to Rabbi Yechon, says, okay, that's the halacha. Halachi the nazir. This is a specific halacha, unique halacha by nazir. Therefore, stumin in b'farashim like. Therefore, we say only if you don't nominate the money, then the law is the way we say. But if you did nominate where the money is going, then there's no Allah and the money for the chattas gets tossed away. El Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish, you learn from a pasuk l'chol nidreichem, l'chol nidreichem l'chol nidreichem, and any extra money left over from the nadarim goes to nadava. What's the difference then if you nominated the money in the pile, whether it's which kabbanas it's for? You just didn't nominate it at all. My idiot why dafka if you didn't nominate it? It needs to be specified where it's going. Amar says Rava. If you actually spelled out that this lot of money is to cover the chattas and shlamim, then kvar poska Tanu Rabbi Shmuel, the Tanu Rabbi Shmuel already said, and that's why the Lakish will say the Mishnah said there's a difference between whether you nominate or not. The Rabbi Shmuel says that once you nominate the money for the chattas, then that money of the chattas has to be thrown away. Where do we find that, Rabbi Shmuel, and what's relevant? Rabbi Shmuel says it says in pasuk rak kochecha, that your kabbalah, it says rak, that only your kabbanas, as if to specify this and not something else. Only your kabbanas, that will be to you, unidorecha, and your vows. What are we talking about over here? We're talking about not the actual carbon itself, but we're talking about like the extra carbon. But instead of the case of our Mishnah where she set it aside and she's no longer nazir, we're talking about velade kachim. Let's say the animal you consecrated gave birth. You took another animal and you swapped one animal for the next, and this is extra. Hakosim bedaber, that's what the pasuk is talking about. And mata konosim, What do you do with the vlad of a carbon that you set aside, or what do you do with the vlad of or the tumura? If you swap animal, you said that this animal here that's holy, I wanted to swap it to another animal, and the thing is that they're both holy now, the original and the new one. What do you do with the new one? So the next pasuk says, Tisa. This pasuk says, Tisa. You should take it up. You should bring it to the place Asher Yivchar Hashem, to the base of Mikdash. So Yochel, I would have thought, Yalim lebeis habechida. I would have thought, okay, bring them to the base of Mikdash, but what do you do with them? This is extra. You don't need any more of the carbon. You already, you still have the original. What do you do with this? You have the original. What do you need to do with the offspring? Well, you have the original. What do you do with the swap? The Yimanim Hemayimaz, I would have thought, let them just die. They just deny them food and drink. Eventually they'll die. Like a carbon chatas, we let it die. Same thing here. This extra carbon, you have no need for it. Let it die. Therefore, the pasuk says, "Well, sisa oilis no, bring it up as a carbon, but only certain carbonates. Which one? The carbon oil. Bring it up as a carbon. The hadam and the blood, bring it up as a carbon." And then the pasuk also says, and that's a carbon oil. So we see that the extra of a carbon oil is brought up as a carbon. And it says also that in the next pasuk, the end of the pasuk says, the blood of your carbon you should pour out, which we're talking about a carbon shlamim. So just like you conducted with the original animal, you conduct also with the animal you're swapping it over to. The way you treat the original shlamim, you do also with the offspring. So we see clearly, at least an oil and a shlamim, the extra is still brought up as an oil as a shlamim. So maybe the same thing goes with the chatas. I would thought the same thing is the offspring of the chatas. And the exchange of an ashram. An ashram is a male, so it can't have any offspring. And so the vlad achat is a female. So the offspring of a chatas, so the exchange of an ashram, so the same thing I want, you bring it up as a carbon. Only an oil and shlamim. But a chatas you don't. So it's clearly here, Divra Bishmal, clearly that if you're already nominated to be a carbon chatas, then you have to throw it away. Even though it's extra, you throw it away. That's why the Mishnah says that if you nominated it, you throw it away. It's only if the money is pooled together and you don't nominate what's what, that's when we say that the entire lot of money can be used for voluntary kabbalas. Rabbi Akiva says, I don't have to learn from this pasuk. Rabbi Akiva, I don't need this pasuk. It says, Ashram hu. You're saying it. How do I know that an ashram, the tamura, the exchange of the ashram, does not get brought up as a carbon? Because regarding the original ashram, it says ashram hu. This is an ashram. And not what? That only the original ashram remains an ashram, but not its swapped. So therefore, we know that the ashram cannot be brought up. Says the Gemara. Let's analyze the brisa. Okay, so we explained the Shlakish and Rabbi Yechon. Let's analyze the brisa for a minute. Tani, it says, Yochel, I would have thought when it comes regarding the Oil Shlami, if it's extra, the Vlad or the Tamura, I would have thought, bring it to the base of Mikdash, but let it die. Yochel, Yala, base of Chida, bring it to the base of Mikdash, Vimanim and my Muslim, don't provide them food and drink, Bishushi Muslim, never to die. Therefore, Tamalema would bring a passing, Vasisa Ilasecha. The question is, Amai, why? Havlad Chatasu, Digimidim Bamisa, we know when it comes to the Vlad of the Chatas, you're saying we would have thought that by oil and shlamim we should let it die. We have a special law, the halacha Moshe Sinai, when it comes to 5 different kinds of chatayis, we let them die. But all other kabbanas, we don't let them die. This is a special law when it comes to chatas. So why would you have thought that an oil and the shlamim let them die? They're not a chatas. Why would you even have thought so that you need a pasuk to tell you otherwise? So why? Only by Havlat chatas we were taught that they let them die. Says the Gemara, because Elam Kro had it not been for the pasuk Havamina, I would have thought Vlad chatas, no, they all die. So what's the halacha Moshe Messiah coming to inform us regarding the offspring of a chatas? I would have thought that Vlad chatas, what do you do with the offspring of chatas? Wherever you are, wherever you live, let it die right then and there. But I would have thought when it comes to an Oil Shlamim, you also let it die because you don't need it anymore, it's extra. But the Velode Kotchi, the base of Chida. It says in the pasuk, also you should bring it to the Makkah, but Hashem. I would have thought bring it to the base of English and there let it die. Comes to tell you they don't die at all. In fact, you bring them on the Mizbeach, even though you don't need them anymore, you continue bringing them on the Mizbeach, the leftovers from a carbon. Okay, let's continue analyzing the Brisa. Ketani says the Brisa, Yochel, I would have thought, Sa'af Vlad Chatas, once you establish that an oil and an ashram, if it's extra like the offspring, you bring it to the Mizbeach. I would have thought the same thing applies to a Chatas, and the same thing applies to the swap of an ashram. I would have thought Av Vlad Chatas, the offspring of a Chatas, or Tmuras ashram, the swap of an ashram, the same thing. Tamalayim, the substitute for an ashram, Tamalayim, therefore it says Rak, only an oil and a shlamim you bring in the Mizbeach. Why do I need a pasuk by chatas? We said there's a halacha Moshe B'Sinai. The 5 cases of chatas, like the owner died, if you lost it and you brought another carbon, then you found this one, or the vlad of a chatas, the offspring of a chatas. So I already have a halacha Moshe B'Sinai that the vlad of a chatas you'll have to let it die. Why do we need to? Need a pasuk to tell you that the chatas, that only the oil shlamim you bring to the mizbech. Says the Gemara, you're right. Hachinami, you're 100% right. But the Kral Ashur does it. You're right. You don't need the pasuk to inform you that a chatas should not be brought with a carbon. That halacha mishnah is going to teach you regarding the ashram. What do you do with the ashram, the offspring of an ashram, or the tamud of an ashram, the exchange of an ashram? You let it die. Says the Gemara. Even for that, I don't need a pasuk because the rule is any case of a chatas, if the chatas is you let it die. If an ashram finds itself in a similar situation, you let it wander about until it contracts a mum, and then you sell it with the money. With the money, you go ahead and do whatever you do. So we already know that you cannot bring the ashram on the mizbech. Forget about the pasuk. We could equate an ashram to a chatas. So they're going to ask ashram nami when it comes to ashram also. Don't we have a rule that koshil b'chatas meisiv by a chatas we let it die is ba'ashram roya by an ashram you have to let it wander about. So therefore we already know that you cannot bring the ashram on the mizbech. So why in the world do you need it? Do you need a pasuk for ashram? Says the Gemara. Ella, you're right. The reason why we need halacha medicine and we need a pasuk, why do we need a pasuk that only oil shlam is brought in the mizbech? We already know the halacha medicine and ashram is equated to chatas. Ella, if it would be only the halacha medicine, having never thought hilchas the halacha is don't bring it. But the active, if you didn't listen to the halacha and you did bring it up as a mizbech, you didn't do anything wrong. The pasuk come and tell you the makivla. If you brought up the chatas or the ashram you shouldn't have, you're actually committing a sin. That only the oil and the shlamim you bring on the mizbech. So we infer from that, but not a chatas, not an ashram. So it adds another layer of sin. Says the Gemara. Let's continue analyzing the brayser. Rabbi Akiva says, you don't need to. It says ashram hu b'aviyasi. He said you don't need your pasuk that only an oil shlamim can be brought up. I already know that an ashram cannot be brought up because it says ashram hu, only the original carbon is an ashram, and obviously not the replacement. Why do I need? According to Rabbi Akiva, let's understand. Why do I need a pasuk of an ashram? Since we equate an ashram to a chatas, and so the chatas cannot be brought up, so the ashram also cannot be brought up. Gemara Gemara Gemila. Then we have Lacha Moshe Sinai, the Chol Shebechatas Mesa, Moshe Roya, that the Chatas is not brought up in the Mizbeach, because Lacha Moshe Sinai, the Vlad, the Chatas is not brought up. So we also know that the Ashram let wander about till the contract to mum, and then you redeem it. So Moshe says, Hachinam, you're right. So why in the world do we need the pasuk Ashram? L'chiasa kra for another thing altogether. The Rav to teach you the din of Rav. No, but Rav said the name of Rav. Ashram. Now, what happens with this ashram that we let it wander about? Contract to mum, you sell it with the money. From that sale, you go ahead and you bring voluntary kabbalas on the mizbech. So you bring it as an oiler. So come along with Abun is the name of Rav. Ashram shenitik liria. Once you took away the ashram and you gave it to a shepherd to mind it until it contracts to mum. So ultimately, what do we do with the money from that? We're going to buy an oiler. So if you proceeded after you gave it to the royat, after you gave it to the shepherd, and you decided to shecht it before even a contract to the mum as a carbon oiler, kosher is kosher. I know why it's kosher. Because ultimately the money of this animal you can use for an oiler. So if I use the animal itself for an oiler, it's all right. But when? Tama the nitik, only if you actually transferred it over to the control of a shepherd. So it's no longer an ashram. Then we say that's a valid carbon oil. Halay nitik, but if you did not yet transfer it to a shepherd, you still have it in your own reshus, in your control, then loy. Then you just passel the animal. Why? It's still an ashram. It does not yet lose the status of an ashram until you physically transfer it over to a shepherd. Now, who? Have a husband yet, as long as it's with the original owner of the ashram, who it remains an ashram. That's what we use the pasuk for.